Welcome to Postcards from Palisade, the podcast that brings you a snapshot of the people and places that make this slice of Western Colorado wonderful. I'm Lisa McNamara. A few years ago, Laura and Brandon Black were happily settling into their lives in Denver when they took a trip to Palisade. On that trip, a seed was planted that grew into a tree that ended up changing the path that they had thought their lives would follow. Wait, is that too corny? Yeah, just a little bit. But in 2018, after that fateful trip, Laura and Brandon bought a vineyard and winery and moved to Palisade. They had never made wine or grown grapes before, but they were confident that they could figure it out. And they did. Very quickly, their Mesa Park Vineyards was producing award-winning wines and attracting a loyal following. Then, in March of 2023, they announced that they were going to shut down the winery to focus on fruit farming. After a collective gasp, followed by an outpouring of support and local panic buying, Mesa Park Vineyard shut its doors, and Mesa Park Fruit Company opened this season. Why did they decide to make this big change, and what are they planning to do now? I talked with Laura to find out.
But you're not, there's no video, right? This is just like audio.
I can't do video.
I don't blame you.
I'm like, I can't do it.
I think it's, for me, like we were on KAFM.
Yeah, I listened to a couple of yours.
And then we did the happy hours during COVID. But the video is like a whole nother like layer of like nervousness for me, and then you're like, what am I doing with my hands? What are you know? So.
I don't want to have to worry about how my face looks.
Yeah.
And like when I'm editing, I don't want to have to try to edit the video smoothly, so I'm just like, I'm not doing it.
Laura and I also talked about working in real estate in the Grand Valley, how her thoughts about short-term rentals changed after living in Palisade for a few years, how the farming and winemaking communities come together to support each other when times get tough, and lots more. On today's postcard from Palisade.
But anyway, before we get too far, can you introduce yourself, just your name, how you introduce yourself to somebody that you're meeting for the first time?
Sure. I'm Laura Black. I am the owner of Mesa Park Fruit Company, formerly known as Mesa Park Vineyards.
And who else is here with us right now?
Daryl, our little French bulldog, who is probably the most popular winery dog in Palisade. Yeah, he's here. You might hear a snort or a grunt from him in the background.
I think he's sleeping right now at my feet.
That you'll hear
really
some
cute.
snores for sure. So, yeah, he's hanging out.
I definitely want to talk about the winery, even though it is no more. So I definitely do want to talk about that, and then about going forward, what you're doing going forward. But before we get into all that, can you just talk a little bit about how you came to Palisade and like kind of your path here?
Sure. Yeah. So Brandon, my husband, and I, we came to Palisade like a year into our relationship. I had been here several times with girlfriends, and I was like, hey, there's this little gem out in Western Colorado. Let's go spend a weekend out there. And so we came out and had a weekend full of wine tasting, and we were actually sitting on the patio at Red Fox Cellars having a wine cocktail and looking at real estate. And we did that often. I was a real estate agent in Denver, and Brandon was a general contractor. And so everywhere we traveled, we always did the like, how much does it cost to live here? This would be a cool place to own a second home, and so on and so forth. So we were just like scrolling through listings in Palisade, sitting on the patio, and we came across Mesa Park Vineyards. And we were like, oh, well, let's just go up there. We've never heard of that place. We've never been there. And so it was later in the day on Saturday. So we're like, we'll get up Sunday morning and just take a drive up. So we did. And even though the hours posted said they should be open, they were closed. And so I actually called the listing agent after Brandon just like wouldn't drop it. And I was like, as a realtor myself, I was like totally honest with her. I'm like, we are looky-loos. We are not going to buy this place, but we're here and we want to take a look. And she's like, just go up the driveway. They're home. Chuck's there. He's a cowboy. He'll let you in, whatever. And so we're like, okay. So we pulled up and met Chuck. He like pulled around the barn in a golf cart. And he was like, come on in. And this was in October, so harvest was happening. And so he took us into the barn and he had all this fermentations going and all this stuff. And he was like dropping pH and titratable acidity numbers and all this stuff at us. And we're like, it was just flying over our heads. But we were like, this is super cool. So we did the tour, and actually we were here for probably like 2 to 3 hours with him. And we didn't even drink any wine. We just sort of toured around. And then we were like, we got to go because we had to get back to Denver. So we hopped in the car, and that's really what started the conversation. It's like 3.5 hours, 4 hours in the car. And we're like, could we do this? Should we do this? And we actually had a trip planned in December of that same year. So that was October. And we were going to South America for 6 weeks. And we're like, we can't buy this place and then leave for 6 weeks. That doesn't work. So we're like, we're just going to table it. And if it's still around when we get back, we'll look into it further. So we went to South America, did wine country there, looked at like, should we buy land here? The language barrier is real. So we came back and we're like, Palisade, it's still there. Let's try. So we wrote up an offer, and after many months of back and forth and trying to figure out financing and all that sort of stuff, we put it under contract and we closed on it. So that was in January of the following year. So it was over a year.
Oh, so over a year, not just a few months, a year and a few months.
So not even the following year, like the following year. Yeah, so it was a long process. And so Chuck and Patty, who own the place, the sellers that we bought it from, they were super patient with us. Because we had no intention of doing this, we had a house under construction in Denver that we were about to move into. We were getting married. Like we had we weren't ready for it.
You're
right?
on a different track.
Right, totally. So we were like, we can't do this unless you can give us a little bit of time to deal with all this stuff that we've got going in Denver. And they did, and they were so great to work with. So Brandon actually came out here in September of the year before we closed and helped with the tail end of harvest and just worked with Chuck in the vineyard a little bit just to try to, so we could figure out a little bit about what we were doing. And then I had to stay in Denver and finish up working. We closed in January, and then I moved out here. I was kind of back and forth quite a bit, and then was here in March. And then we reopened the tasting room and everything after a remodel in April of 2018.
2018, okay.
Yeah, so it's been a little over 5 years, and it's been awesome.
And so the former owners, were they retiring? Are they still around in the area?
Yes. So they were retiring. Nice. They had Mesa Park for 10 years. They bought it with their daughter and son-in-law. And their daughter and son-in-law moved back to Denver about halfway through their ownership. And so Chuck and Patty were running it, and they were ready to retire. This place it's endless amounts of work. And it was sort of their second career, if you will. So they retired into it. And then they were really ready to retire. They're still in Grand Junction. They're in the Redlands. And we're still very close to them. Part of our contract was that Chuck would stick around for the first year and help us. So, Daryl,
It's like thunder rumbling.
So we've stayed really close with them. And yeah, as time went on, Chuck sort of transitioned, less and less from like helping us out and more into just coming and hanging out on the customer side of the bar and chit-chatting with, our visitors. And he had so many friends and people who loved him. And so whenever he was here, he always found somebody to have a glass of wine with and hang out. So that was a really good transition, and it just worked out really well for everybody. Yeah. I always say, I think as much as we needed him that first year, it was like he needed that to sort of let go a little bit too, Yeah, if you ask Chuck, Chuck loves this place. Yeah. So it's his baby. So
that's such a cool experience, though, just to have that. And not because you hadn't had experience working at a winery or a vineyard or at a farm or anything like that before.
No experience at all. I hadn't had anything. Brandon is from Montana, and his family had a farm growing up, and he would spend summers there. So he had worked on farms before, and then he actually lived in Australia before we met, and he farmed out there. Okay. Different kind of farming, broadacre farming, like huge tractors. And so this fruit farming is all by hand, and a lot of like farmers from the Midwest would come into the tasting room and they're like, how many acres do you have? And we're like, 8. And they're like, 80? And it's like, no, 8, because you do everything by hand, you know?
Right.
So it's just totally different.
Yeah.
So that was his experience farming. But it was super valuable even so, because like he could get on the tractor and he knew how to drive it, where I was like, I have no idea what to do, you know?
Yeah.
That first year was such a huge learning curve for both of us. We had equipment in the winery that we didn't even know what it did until we got to harvest. You know, we were like, yeah, we have that thing and we know we need to use it, but we don't know what it does.
Yeah.
So,
oh, wow. Right. That's amazing. I mean, what a huge project to take on. And so, of course, like everybody probably in Palisade listening to this knows that you recently decided to shut down the winery piece of things. Are you ready to talk about that? Like why you decided to do that and kind of the thought that went into that decision?
Sure. Yeah. We've been, at least I think we've been like fairly open about our reasoning behind it. So a year and a half ago, we had a baby, and anyone who's had a baby knows that changes your life in a significant way. And so it was one of those things that the conversation started. Well, I mean, even back further than that, there were things happening that at the time that they were happening, we didn't really know what they were leading us to. But looking back, it was like sort of these like sequence of events that led us to this decision. The first one being that we had that really hard freeze in October of 2020. And so we did not have a crop in 2021 at all. So we didn't make any wine. And a lot of people brought grapes in or brought juice in from elsewhere and made wine anyway that year. But Maya, our little one, was born in October of 2021. And so that would have been right in the middle of harvest and winemaking. And so we just decided we'll figure it out afterwards. So we had the baby, didn't make any wine that year. And then we got to this past year harvest, so like September, October of 22. And we were really low on wine. And we're like, okay, we are going to have to make a significant investment and bring some wine in from elsewhere, make as much wine as we possibly can, or do we shift our focus to one of the, I always say the winery has like 3 businesses. There's the retail side, which is you're selling the wine. There's the manufacturing side, you're making the wine. And then there's the farming, right? So do we shift our focus to like 1 or 2 of those 3 things instead of trying to do them all, raise this little one? I do real estate. We just had a lot of balls in the air, right? Yeah. And Brandon is our farmer and was our winemaker too. And so his season it never ended because he was like rushing to get the wine done so he could get back into the field, and then rushing to get harvested so he could get to the winemaking, and it just never stopped for him. Right. And so that was another thing that led us to this decision. It was like, you have to pick, right? And then the other thing is that we're sitting here, you can see that's our tasting room right there. It's right across, it's basically in our backyard.
Yes.
And so as much as it was tons of fun most of the time to have friends and family and things like that here, there were days where we were like, we just wish we could have our house or our backyard to ourselves, you know? And so it was just sort of like all big decisions, it wasn't one thing in particular. It was just like a lot of things got to a point where we're like, we need to make this decision. And we went as far as to say, like, should we buy a piece of land and build another building and grow our production, and then we can afford to hire a full-time winemaker and then we're like, do we want to do that? We're trying to get stuff off of our plate instead of add more stuff to our plate. And so it was just like, I mean, it was months and months of conversation and back and forth, and it came as a shock to people when we announced this spring, but we had sort of decided at harvest last year, right? Because we didn't make any wine again. So we were like, if we sell our grapes, that's it. Like, we're done. And so while it was a shock for a lot of people this spring, it was like sort of, we had time to process it all. So that's just sort of like a long answer to your short question.
No, it's really interesting. And just, I think a lot of people, you know, are like, why, what did you think of this? What did you think of that? But when you think about all those pieces, and then the fact that you don't ever have downtime. I mean, like, people would be here in your yard
right now
when you're not working, right? When you're not working, quote unquote,
right?
You would never have any downtime. So
the summer season, it wears on you when it's because it's 7 days a week, right? And it was just like, if we even had, that's why we were like, well, maybe we could move the tasting room,
right?
And then it wouldn't be, but it's just one of those things that we were like, we're really good at adding stuff. We are. That's what we do. And so we're like, let's stop that for a second and think about this logically. And honestly, Brandon needed this too. Like, he couldn't keep going how he was. It was just, he was going to totally burn out.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's not good.
Yeah.
No.
So yeah, it was a tough decision because there were so many parts of it that were so much fun, and like creating this product, and we could share it with friends and family. And we had like, some of our customers have become really good friends, and the amount of support that people showed us, it made it tough to make the decision. Like, those were the reasons it was hard,
Yeah,
so.
I'm sure. Yeah, I saw when you did announce it on social media, there's a huge outpouring of support and I mean, sadness, but also understanding. And I'm sure people stopping by to say goodbye. I mean, you had months of that, people coming in and giving you their stories, and I'm sure that was really hard.
Yeah, it was a lot, but it's funny because when we made the decision, I was like almost worried that we were letting people down or something like that, and the amount of support, like you just said, that we got, instead of like, oh, that sucks, or I was like, oh. And people were like, I understand.
Right.
And I'm like, oh. It was like, whew, a huge weight off my shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what are some of the stories that are going to stick with you that people told you?
I think it's more the people, right, that we met along the way. And then we have some incredible views of the Grand Mesa out there, and we had some wine club pickup parties that were just super special. We had a couple weddings where we had just amazing sunsets for these couples. And then, like, the people that we met along the way, a lot of which hopefully will be friends in the future. The support that we were shown from people near and far was unbelievable. That's awesome. Before we started recording, we were talking about our COVID happy hours. And this woman named Deb the Pirate was her Instagram handle. And she and her husband Norm lived in Puerto Rico. And they would tune in. We never had met them, and they would tune in every Friday to these COVID happy hours that we did. And then she came here, and she's like, "I'm Deb the Pirate," and we're like, "Oh my god!" So just like stuff like that is so crazy, right? So that was really cool. The outpouring of like support that we received was amazing. That's like the part that makes me, that's like the you say it's bittersweet, and that's like the sweet part that you're like, it's so I guess the bitter part, right? But
both.
Both. So
and you were able to go out with a bang at Sip in the Spring and just sell out the rest of the wine. And how did it feel when you were done with that event?
That was crazy, because I really, as odd as it sounds, throughout the whole process, like when we announced, and I had like crazy amounts of emails, and I was trying to respond to everyone, and then we went to Sip into Spring, and we brought all the wine that we had left. I'm like, we're just going to bring it all, and if we sell it, great, and if we don't, then we'll figure out what to do with the rest of it. And it was in the second session, and we got to the last bottle, and it hit me, right? I'm like, this is it. Oh my gosh, and it was like excitement, but it was also like, I was just like a little bit sad. I'm like, it's over. And our good friends who we met through some other friends at the winery, Kelly and JT, came up and they bought the last bottle of wine, and we have like documentation of that. So that was cool, but it was like, it was just, again, it's just like so bittersweet, right? Like so much excitement, but also you're like, that is a chapter in our lives that was like a very significant one, and one that we will never forget for so many reasons, like highs and lows and goods and bads. And it's over,
right?
And there's cleanup stuff to do, like bookkeeping and record keeping and all that sort of stuff. But like, that's it. We sold our last bottle of wine. So yeah, that was kind of crazy. I was like, I didn't expect to like have the feeling that I did, But it was the perfect way to like end it.
Right.
because it was a beautiful day. That festival is so amazing. And so it was just like we got to see so many friends and wine club members and things like that at the festival. So it was a good way to call it.
But so obviously you both are amazing winemakers because you
Not
know
me.
your wine. Okay, Brandon is an amazing winemaker. Y'all won in the most recent Governor's Cup 2022 a double gold, which is huge. I mean, one of only 7 wines to win that, and I think you had 7 wines that won different honors.
Yeah, we
That's
we
huge.
medaled in everything we submitted, so that was really exciting.
Right. So clearly you're awesome at it. Do you think you would ever get back into it? Or do you need time to even entertain that idea?
So it's a question that we've been asked a lot.
I'm sure.
And Brandon is our winemaker. I don't take credit for any of our wine. I like dump the grapes in the crusher, but when it comes to actually making it taste good and the like late nights doing pump overs and punch downs and all that, that's not me. So it's all Brandon, and as of right now, he says no.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that will change in the future.
Sure.
But yeah, as of right now, he's he's shifted his focus to like solely farming, and he's very focused on that at this point. So maybe once he gets sort of all of that under control in a few years or something, maybe he does like a couple batches as hobbies, as a hobby winemaker. I don't know. I would love for him to experiment with sparkling wine, just because it would be something fun and different. But he says no right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's a good point to transition and just, no more looking back, looking forward.
Sure, yeah.
So looking forward, what are you focusing on?
So that's when we made the decision. It was to shift our focus to farming solely. And then, like all things, you can farm as much fruit as you want, but you have to sell it too, right? So we shifted gears, and Mesa Park Vineyards is slowly transitioning to Mesa Park Fruit Company. We still have our vineyards, so we'll still grow wine grapes here and then sell them to the other wineries. Mason and Corey Norsworthy, the winemaker there, they've been buying our grapes for a couple years. Q-Tori down in Paonia has bought some of our grapes in the past. So we will keep people informed on where they go, because people have asked that too, like, hey, where are your grapes going to go?
Right. Still keeping a little piece of little connection.
Yeah. So, and we're hoping that we can get some sort of like vineyard designation on the bottle or something like that. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And then in addition to our vineyard, our neighbor above us, to the south of us, her name is Lori, and she purchased, I should know this, I think it's 19 acres total in 2020. And it was a dilapidated vineyard, and we had leased it from her with the intent to just sort of rehab it. And then we were going to keep the grapes, and she had Syrah and Cab Franc and Merlot up there, I think, or Cab Sauv. Anyway, that freeze happened in October, and her vines were in such bad shape that they did not rebound like most of the vines in the valley. Yeah. And so when that happened, we sat down with her, had a big conversation, and she was like, I don't want to grow grapes. I want to grow peaches and cherries. And we had a lease on the place, so Brandon's like, okay, I'm going to learn how to grow peaches and cherries. So like another thing that happened at the time, we didn't think anything of it, but it like led us to this decision, right? So she put in 4 acres of cherries, and then we just planted 6 acres of peaches on her property. She's doing her cherries on a trellis system. So it almost looks like a hops field with like the big posts.
Oh, interesting.
And then there's a wire running across the posts, and these cherries, when you buy them, they're like made for this trellis system. So they're these long spurs, and you basically plant them, and then you bend the trunk along the wire, and then the shoots come up vertical. So you're basically, when it's mature, it'll look like a wall of cherries. And so you can plant more trees per acre, and the labor per acre is supposed to be lower because you're not on ladders in each tree picking. You can literally just like stand on a flatbed trailer and drive along and pick off the wall of cherries. Sure. So we'll see. She's got 4 acres of it, and it's one of the larger systems in this valley as far as the trellising cherries goes. And so we'll see how it goes. And then we planted an acre of peaches behind the barn, behind our tasting room. That was Cab Sauv that also didn't really come back all that well after that freeze. And then a few months ago, my dad and stepmom were in town, and I thought they were playing looky-loo, and they ended up buying an orchard right next to Palisade Pies.
Oh, wow.
And so we have peaches, plums, and pluots in that orchard. And so Brandon's farming that too. So there you go. So he's busy.
A lot of fruit.
Yeah, a lot of fruit. So we had, I did a social media post a couple weeks ago. We had this semi truck pull up with 4,000 trees in it. And I'm like, here we go, you know?
Yeah, how did that go? What was it like to plant that many trees? How long did it take?
They plant them really quickly, actually. So Kenny Sal, he's a big peach farmer, and he's across the road from us. So him and his guys helped us plant. We don't have the appropriate equipment to plant peach trees like that. But it was amazing. There were, I don't know, 10 or 12 guys out there, and they just drive the tractor along and like plop a tree in, and then a guy throws water in, and then a guy throws dirt on top, and then a guy comes and stomps around the tree. And then our guys were following with the irrigation system, so they were like pulling the hoses and putting the sprinkler heads in. And so it's really like, it's tons of manual labor, but it goes pretty quickly. Like I think they planted the 6 or 7 acres of peaches in a day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
and then
amazing.
they did the other 2 acres of cherries. That was another day. Wow. Yeah. They're long days.
Yeah.
But
still, that's, wow, one day. That's amazing.
Yeah. So now the trees won't produce for a few years. So you're just growing them. And then I think the cherry trees that we planted last year will flower. They'll have fruit next year, but we'll pull it all off because we want the energy to go towards getting the tree strong versus growing cherries when they're so young. So, and even like all the peach trees, and you just pull off all the blossoms and let the energy go back to the tree. It's just to establish a good foundation for the tree so that it can withstand these crazy weather events that we have here in Colorado.
Sometimes, yeah. So you're still a couple years out from producing fruit that you're selling.
Well, so
other than grapes.
My parents' orchard is 5th year.
Okay.
So we'll have fruit.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So
are you planning to sell it at farmers markets or wholesale or?
So we are in the process of figuring all of that out right now. We will have peaches, and then the plums and pluots, that freeze got them pretty good. So we won't have a ton of those. But we're talking to some people around town about just doing like pop-ups. And so we'll obviously post about those.
Awesome.
And then we are going to, Lori, our neighbor, so she's a partner in Mesa Park Fruit Company.
Okay.
And she sort of splits time between her house here and then she's in Louisville or Superior on the Front Range. And so she's working with Sweet Cow and Lucky Pie in Louisville, downtown Louisville. And we'll have a tent there with peaches on Friday evenings. They have their big like market down there.
Awesome.
And so we'll be in their parking lot with Palisade peaches.
Nice.
Once it's peach season. Yeah, so that's what we know so far.
Okay.
We're still working through the details. It feels like we're in our first year of the winery ownership again, where we're like, we don't know. We're just sort of figuring it out as we go.
Yeah.
But without Chuck this time. So,
Yeah.
But we'll figure it out,
Yeah.
So yeah, we will be direct to consumer with some of our fruit this summer. We just need to figure out where and how that looks.
Sure. Yeah. So like a pop-up at a winery or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Jeff and Jody don't know this yet, but I'm going to ask them if we can pop up at the Spoken Vine.
That'd be awesome.
Or over at Restoration.
Monday.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a great time to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll see us around town, and once we have details, we'll get them out there. Yeah, it'll be fun to not have to do it 7 days a week, right? And we can just pop up and see some people, and it's cool. It's like sharing our wine was, where you're like, we worked so hard at this, and here it is, and we hope you like it. It's sort of the same thing with the fruit, right? So it's cool.
Absolutely.
It's fun.
Right? You spent a whole season growing this.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait.
Thanks. Yeah.
So on the real estate side of things, I think most visibly you are in the process of selling to Back Canyon Winery, and that seems like such a great fusion of your skills in both winery operation and real estate and things like that.
It's been good. The real estate. So when we came from Denver, I had been in real estate for, I don't know, 12 or 15 years, something like that. And I was like, I'm going to table real estate. I'm just going to focus on the winery. And I did for a couple years, but real estate's just sort of in my blood. I love it. It's fun. And I've been doing it for so long. I really enjoy it. And so I ended up transferring my license over to Fruit and Wine Real Estate in Palisade, and Tammy Craig is the managing broker over there. And she was super welcoming and like, come on board. And because I was a little nervous, you know, I'm like from Denver and I don't know, it's just, sometimes it's smaller over here. Yeah. And yeah. So, but she was super welcoming, and she's been awesome. So it's been really fun because I had done real estate in Denver for so long, and then I came here and it was like learning the business all over again. Water rights and just crop.
Oh my gosh, mill tailings
reports. Yeah, all this stuff, right? That Denver doesn't have.
Uranium?
There was a house in downtown Palisade that I sold, and during the inspection report, the inspector found a 500-gallon oil tank in the front yard, buried. That didn't happen. I never had anything like that happen in Denver.
Yeah.
And so it was just there. It's just this whole different ballgame here. But it's been really fun, and I think I add a lot of value when it's farmland or winery type of stuff, because I own, operate. You know, I just can speak to it because I've lived it. So selling DeBeck, Bennett and Davey, who owned DeBeck Canyon. Everybody knows Bennett and Davey if you've been around Palisade at all. And so it's definitely kind of sad to see them go, but I think it's time.
Yeah.
You know,
Also
I think they're ready. Right. Yeah. When they called me, I was like, yes, you know, of course I'd be honored. And we have it under contract, and it closes at the end of July. And I don't know exactly what's going to go in there yet, but it's going to be cool.
Yes.
So
something cool.
Yeah. And it's a great, I mean, that space is just, the house is so cute. And then you've got the warehouse for production or whatever you want to use it for. I've heard brewery and then wine bar in the house tossed around, which would be super cool. Anything that brings more food into Palisade would be great.
That's what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, exactly. So that part of it's been really fun. And the real estate, yeah, it's just, there's so many different facets to it out here. And I was actually on the phone with an appraiser the other day on another property, and we were just sort of talking about like pricing and then appraising property in Palisade, because in a subdivision it's easier, like, well, that house sold for that and that one sold for that, so this is worth this. And in Palisade you're like, okay, well, that's peaches and this is grapes and that one has water and this one has a microjet sprinkler and this one has a fan and this one has a house, and you know, this one has an outbuilding that could be migrant house. I mean, it's just like, it's all crazy.
Right. What's comparable?
Yeah. It's fun. It's interesting. It like has expanded my skill set a lot, which I like I said at the beginning, we're good at like piling stuff on, but I like to learn and like do new things. It keeps life interesting, you know?
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
Selling real estate out here has been something that I've really enjoyed, more so than I thought. And I was like I said, I was trying to stay away, but here I am. So yeah.
Since you started and kind of looking forward the next few years, like how have things changed, and how do you see them changing in the future, like just in terms of real estate in Palisade?
Wow. Well, I mean, even going back to when we purchased to now, it's gone crazy, right? Palisade is on the map now. There's no like, oh, what's this little hidden gem anymore. It is out there and people are aware of it, which brings good and bad things. The town needs the tourism in order for the businesses to thrive and for the town to thrive in general, you know? And so, but along with that comes some expensive real estate prices, especially when it's all a matter of perspective. When you're coming to look at Palisade real estate, you get people from the West Coast and they come in here and they're like, this is cheap.
Right.
Or people from the mountain towns, you know?
Yeah.
But people who have been here for a long time, they're like, hey, these prices are out of control. You know, we're going to lose what made Palisade the reason people love it. And so that is it's a balance, and it's a fine line that we're walking.
Right.
And so I I can't even tell you how many people have called me since I started doing real estate here, and they're like, I want to buy a house in downtown Palisade and I want to do a short-term rental.
Oh.
And you can't.
No.
Right? There's a moratorium, or not a moratorium, but there's a wait list for it.
There's a limit.
And when I first got, there's a cap, and so when I first got here, the wait list was like 12 names or something like that, I think, and it's over 60 now. And so obviously that has become a very popular thing to do. Yeah. And I used to think like, oh, the town needs to increase the number that they'll allow. And now I am so glad that whoever put that into place did, right? And because otherwise, if you think about it, downtown, like the housing stock would be a motel all summer long. Right. And you need motels, you need places for people to stay, but you also need full-time residents that support the restaurants in the winter. And
it would empty out in the winter.
It would.
In that case.
And so, and Palisade gets very quiet in the winter as it is. So I'm so glad that that's in place. And I think a lot of people from the outside, myself included, when I got here, don't understand it. And like, why would you do that? You know, you're losing revenue and this and that. But you're also like, there has to be some sort of way to keep the town a community, right? And that helps a lot. Yeah. So as far as where I see real estate going, I mean, it's going to continue to get more expensive here. It just is. There's so much demand and there's so little inventory. It's supply and demand.
Absolutely.
You know, that's all that it is. So, but I do think it's great up on East Orchard Mesa. The agricultural zoning is in place. It's subdividing, you know, you can take 20 acres and go down to 2 10-acre parcels or whatever. And that's no issue. But I highly doubt you're going to see a subdivision up here like of homes, you know, on 1/4 acre lots. It's just not going to happen. And I think that's great. There's only so much of this land that you can grow peaches and cherries and grapes on, and it needs to be available for people to do that. So yeah, I mean, I used to say it with the winery all the time, because the winery life seems so glamorous and wineries just seem like these like, it's like a dream to own one. And whether that's true or not, at the root of all of it, you're farming grapes, right? And if you can't farm grapes, you can't make wine. And so I just think it's important. And I think there's a lot of people around here, and, you know, the Land Conservancy and all that sort of stuff is just so important to keep the root of what makes Palisade so special here. Right. So yeah, I think we're going to continue to see the influx of people from out of state and from the mountain towns. Like their mud season, it's like you couldn't pick a better time in Palisade, right? In the spring and the fall, people come here and they're like, I want to move here, and then it's August 10th and it's 105 and it's a little hot, you know. We're all like longing for late September when it cools down to like 95, and we're like, oh, this is so nice, but it's hard to beat. It's hard to beat it out here, you know? Yeah. So yeah, I do think that we'll just continue to see that influx of people, but hopefully it drives more businesses to the town, and the town can continue to grow and flourish in a responsible way, you know? Yeah. It's really a tough balance, because we get such a huge influx of people during tourist season, and then in the winter they all go away. Right. And these businesses have to pay rent year round, you know? So it's, but it's like all the farms and everything else, you make all your money during tourist season, and then you have to sort of like ration it so you can get through the winter. So yeah, it's just an interesting, I've never lived in a tourist town till now. And I would say Palisade is a tourist town, you know? Whether some of the people that have been here for a while want to hear that or not, it is. So anyway.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I definitely think that the Planning Commission and just kind of zoning in general, they've done a lot of really, it's a tough balance to strike, but they've made a lot of really good forward-looking decisions that not everybody is happy about. I don't think sometimes nobody's happy about them, but it's at least thoughtfully done.
I think so, and them trying to, when they put that moratorium in place for new subdivisions, to decide, basically redo the zoning for the town. I think the reason that went into place, that it was a little like, oh, hindsight's 2020, we should have done this a while ago, but here we are. But hopefully it like you said, it is like a thoughtful process, and they're looking at what Palisade is right now and where it's going, I think it probably was an appropriate time to do it.
What's your favorite part about the Palisade community?
The community. Yeah. You probably hear that a lot, right? But it's special. It really is.
It is special.
One of the things that I don't want to say we were surprised, but it was just sort of like a welcome thing that happened when we got here. The wine community, just like, they were like, hey, we're here to help you. You know, whatever you need, we're here for you. And we had so many wineries that were just so supportive. And again, just like when I was talking about joining fruit and wine real estate, I thought the wine community might be like, oh, there's these two young kids from Denver. They don't know what they're doing. And it was quite the opposite. And so by joining Palisade kind of through the wine community, we met a lot of people really quickly. And it's just grown. And the community here, I mean, it's the reason you're here, right?
Yeah.
It's just, it's special. And there's like a camaraderie with the local residents it's just something cool. And I think when you're farming, I read this quote a while ago, and it was something to the effect of like a small farming town, like rides these waves together, right? The highs and the lows, because it's very rare that like we'll freeze and our neighbor doesn't, right? So like we're all in this together to some extent. It was really crazy earlier this year. It was end of April, 25th, 26th, 27th, something like that, when we had those freezes. And we have a wind machine over at my dad's property. And so Brandon was up like running that, and then the sprinklers were going in the cherry orchard, and I promise you, Sea Road right there was busier at 3 a.m. than it is during the day. And it was, even though no one was happy about being up doing what they were doing, it was sort of like, Brandon was like, it was like this cool thing. Like, we are all in this together. We're all out here like trying to do everything that we can to save our crop this year. And that's like cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm like,
it is really special. It's like not competitive, and it's really unique.
Yeah. So that's what I think our favorite thing about Palisade for sure is the community. And we found a great group of friends. Like, that was another thing that I was like, oh, we're moving to this town and we're not going to meet anyone our own age. And it's been totally the opposite. Yeah, it's
people
been
are
super
so
cool.
friendly. And that was something that, right, like you heard, I mean, we didn't even, I thought, oh, it's a small town. Like, how many people are there even going to be? And then how many of those people can be our friends? And it's like, I have more friends here than I've ever had in my life.
I know. It's crazy. And everyone's so welcoming, right?
Yeah. Never would have thought that would happen.
Yeah.
So it's just awesome.
We just found, I thought it would be hard to meet people, and we found it to be the complete opposite. So
everyone's socially starved. They just want to hang out.
Yeah, totally. So great. And like, the Spoken Vine on Monday nights, and you go on the bike rides. We used to before we had the baby. But it's just fun to go down there, and I've taken Maya down there like by myself, and I have no idea if anyone's, and you always run into somebody and you can sit and chat, and it's awesome.
Well, as soon as she's big enough to be in a carrier or something, you should join again.
We have one. We should put her. We should just go down and do it.
Yeah,
so,
you should.
Yeah. Yeah, she's not a fan of the helmet.
Oh, right.
But gotta wear it.
Yep.
So,
used to it.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you wanted to just share with people that I didn't touch on, or?
Yeah. So, well, I'll just talk right now. You're probably gonna have to like edit this back into the farming part, but I just want to mention that the H-2A visa program that we use for our migrant workers that come up from Mexico. So we started doing that last year, and we go through a process with the Department of Labor. Kim Noland over at Noland Orchards actually is our H-2A agent, and she does a lot of the farms here in the valley. But we decided that after COVID, it was like so hard to find labor in the vineyards, and people would show up and work for 2 hours and then say, oh, this is too hard, or it's too hot, or one guy was like, I forgot my inhaler at home, I'll be right back, and never came back. And so we were just like, all right, we gotta figure something else out, right? Yeah. And so a lot of the larger farmers use these H-2A guys that come up, and so we're like, we're gonna go through the process. And so we did that last year, and we partnered with Richard and Carol at Z's Orchard, and so we bought a manufactured home and put it on their land, and we share our workers with them. These guys, we have most of them. We had 3 last year, and we have 5 this year, and 3 of the 5, our 3 last year are back this year with 2 additional guys.
Awesome.
And these guys, I didn't know what to expect, but these guys come up and well, there is a language barrier for sure, but they just want to work. They want to work so hard, and they will work as many hours as you will let them. And it's really cool because at the end of the year last year, we learned that one of the guys, while he was here, his wife had a baby. Oh. And he was able to send money back to her to get her into a hospital that she wanted to have the baby at versus where she had to go. I know. It's life-changing for these guys. Right. And then he told us when he was leaving that the rest of the money that he made, he used to buy a piece of land for his family, and he wants to come back this year so he can save up that money and build a house for his family. And so it was crazy because he had the baby and she was 4 months old before he even got to meet her because he was here. But these guys, when you think about the sacrifice that they make so that they can take care of their family, I mean, they're here from March until October. Right. So, yeah, it's super cool, right? And so it's been a really good experience, and it's great to have, for Brandon, it's incredible to have these guys. They're young and they're full of energy, and they are just like ready to get to work. So that's been a really cool experience, and our hope is that they continue to come back, and then they sort of know the program, and hopefully the language barrier becomes less and less. Right. We have made a pact that this winter we're going to learn some Spanish because they know enough, and then Google Translate.
Right. Oh my gosh, it's so
you literally
useful.
Lose stuff in translation, but you can get by,
You get the basics.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we have a lady that helps us in the vineyard, and she is bilingual. She's from Mexico and just got her citizenship a few years ago. But she's been working at our vineyard since even the owners, before Chuck and Patty. She worked for 15 years, probably 18 years, I don't know. But anyway, she translates a lot for us, but she helps us with everything. She's great. Her name's Maria, and I don't know that Brandon would have survived the last 5 years without Maria. So yeah, just a plug for La Plaza, because
amazing.
Yeah, this valley wouldn't exist without these guys that come up and work. It's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's super cool to be able to provide that opportunity for people too.
Yeah.
To be able to do something that changes their lives.
It's amazing. Like when you hear what they're doing with the money, you're like, wow.
That's really cool.
So yeah, awesome. And then back to your question, social media tags. So Instagram is at Mesa Park Fruit. And then on Facebook, we're Mesa Park Fruit Company. And we'll keep those pages up to date, like I said, with where you can find us this summer once we have fruit to sell and where our grapes are going and just sort of like what's happening on the farm. Yeah, that's the gist of it, awesome. I think. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's good to get the story out, and hopefully this will answer a lot of people's questions about like what's happening next,
Right.
I put that new logo up on social media, and everyone's like, cool, where can we find your fruit? And I'm like, I don't know yet. We're gonna figure it out.
This is where you can find out.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome.
So
well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.
If you're one of those lucky people with a bottle or two of Mesa Park Vineyards wine in storage, savor it. But if Laura and Brandon were that great at growing grapes and making wine, the rest of their fruit is going to be amazing. If you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you have an idea for an upcoming episode, I'd love to hear from you. You can reach me at lisa@postcardsfrompalisade.com. The Postcards from Palisade podcast is available on all major podcast distribution platforms. Find it and subscribe now so you don't miss an episode. Episodes and links to more information are also posted on the website, postcardsfrompalisade.com. Thanks so much for listening. With love, from Palisade.